tomorrow's Saturday nights in June, starting at 8 p.m. Eastern on C-SPAN.
Washington Journal continues.
George Farah, the author of this new book, No Debate. Good morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
The discussions will continue this fall, the debates between John Kerry and George W. Bush. Will any third-party candidate participate?
Not as long as the Commission on Presidential Debates, which has sponsored presidential debates since 1988, continues to run the show. If we are successful, we've created a Citizens Debate Commission comprised of 17 national civic leaders to replace the Commission on Presidential Debates as the national debate sponsor. If we are successful in hosting the presidential debates, it's likely that third-party independent challengers that the American people want to hear from and see will be included in this fall's presidential debates.
Let me get into some of the detail in what you write in the book in the chapter called Debate Cartel. By donating to the CPD, which is the Commission on Presidential Debates, corporations make tax-deductible contributions that benefit both the major parties simultaneously, while the donations to the nonpartisan League of Women Voters, which organized the debates in 1976, 1980, and 1984, were primarily considered civic charity. Corporations, however, perceive donations to the bipartisan CPD to be bipartisan political contributions. Can you explain further?
Absolutely. The Commission on Presidential Debates was created by the Republican and Democratic parties for the Republican and Democratic parties. In 1986, the Republican National Committee and Democratic National Committee actually ratified an agreement, Steve, for the parties to take over the presidential debates. And the Commission on Presidential Debates is co-chaired by Frank Fahrenkopf and Paul Kirk. Frank Fahrenkopf is the former chair of the Republican Party, and Paul Kirk is the former head of the Democratic Party. As a result, when you make contributions to the Commission on Presidential Debates, corporations are essentially giving to an organization that is controlled by the Republican and Democratic parties, and therefore those contributions are considered bipartisan political contributions.
John Danforth's name is mentioned throughout your book. What's his connection to the Debate Commission?
Former Senator John Danforth is a member of the Commission on Presidential Debates, the organization that we're trying to displace, precisely because the Commission on Presidential Debates exists exclusively, Steve, exclusively to award control of the presidential debates to the nominees of the Republican and Democratic parties at the expense of voter education. As a result of the Commission on Presidential Debates' sponsorship, third-party independent candidates that the American people want to see are excluded. People like Ross Perot, Ralph Nader, Pat Buchanan. Issues the American people want to hear about are often ignored during the presidential debates. Issues like child poverty, environmental devastation, corporate crime, immigration, government waste. And most importantly, rather than being able to watch actual debates as a result of challenging and engaging debate formats, voters are subject to a sort of series of glorified bipartisan press conferences in which the candidates essentially just recite a series of memorized sound bites rather than actually discuss the issues. Walter Cronkite called the presidential debates an unconscionable fraud and accused the candidates of, quote, sabotaging the electoral process.
Janet Brown, who is the executive director of the Commission on Presidential Debates, she's been on this network many, many times, has said that by the time this campaign gets to late September, early October, it's time to winnow the process with candidates who have a realistic chance of being the next president. We have not elected a third-party president in our modern history in the last 100-plus years. Why the fight over this?
The fundamental question is, do you want your national presidential debate sponsor to fight on behalf of the public interest to ensure that the debates are what the American people want them to be, which is essentially a forum for popular candidates to discuss important issues in an unscripted manner? The Commission on Presidential Debates thinks it's its responsibility to, exactly as you described it, winnow the playing field, regardless and irrespective of whether the American people want that playing field winnowed or narrowed. We, the Citizens Debate Commission, believe that the presidential debate sponsor exists to realize the aspirations of the American people. If the American people want to see just 2 candidates, that's fine. We'll put on 2 candidates. If they want 4 ought to be included in the presidential debates. It's not the presidential debate sponsor, its obligation to determine on behalf of the American people behind closed doors in a law firm and law office in Washington who will and will not participate in the most important public forum for the selection of the most powerful office in the world.
The networks organized one series of debates back in 1960 between Kennedy and Nixon. The League of Women Voters had one debate in which John Anderson participated in the head-to-head debate with Ronald Reagan. Jimmy Carter did not participate in that debate. And then the Commission organized debates in 1992 that did include the third-party presidential and vice presidential candidate, Reform Party, Ross Perot.
That's a very significant point. The Commission on Presidential Debates likes to tout Perot's inclusion in 1992 as evidence of its neutrality. It will say on and on, we are not a bipartisan organization. We're nonpartisan. The evidence is 1992. But with all due respect to the Commission, that's entirely untrue. In 1992, the only reason why Ross Perot was included in the presidential debates, and this is discussed obviously in my book, is that President Bush made his own participation in the 1992 presidential debates conditional on Ross Perot's inclusion. Perot would not have been included if President Bush, who ultimately blamed Perot for his inclusion, did not demand that Perot be included. In fact, the Commission on Presidential Debates, and our organization, Open Debates, has all these documents proving this, the Commission on Presidential Debates fought Ross Perot's inclusion tooth and nail. It only allowed Perot to initially suggest that Perot be excluded from all 3 presidential debates. It then allowed Perot to be included in only 1 presidential debate, and eventually acquiesced to the President of the United States, because that's its job, and allowed Perot to participate in all 3 presidential debates. In other words, Steve, the fact that Perot was included in 1992 is not evidence of their nonpartisanship. It's in fact evidence that they do exactly what the Republican and Democratic candidates want.
George Farah is the executive director of Open Debates, and you can log on to the website citizensdebate.org, and the author of this book. Our phone lines are open. Let's go to Fort Myers, Florida. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. My main concern...
Good morning, Fort Myers.
Yes, hello? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay. My main concern on the debates. Our most cherished thing that we can do in this country is to have real elections and to elect our leaders. My main concern on these elections that have been taking place concerns the skull and bones. I want to know why that is never brought up as a question when these people take an allegiance to one another behind closed doors. Why is that never brought up, and why is that allowed to get away with in this country?
Carla, let me ask you a question, because that has come up time and time again. Both John Kerry and George W. Bush, members of the Yale University Skull and Bones. Do you believe that affects their policies today, what they did when they were in college?
Well, certainly I do, because it leaves no margin for error, in my opinion. I don't feel we're having real elections in this country with the diebold black boxes, miscounting like they do. Go to Bev Harris, talk to her. You need to have her on.
Okay, thank you, caller. Mr. Farah?
Skull and Bones, other issues relating to the candidates' experiences, these are issues that are avoided when the candidates control and operate the presidential debates. Every 4 years, the candidates and the representatives get together behind closed doors, and they draft what's called a memoranda of understanding, a secret contract, a blueprint for the presidential debates. These secret contracts dictate who will ask the questions, who will participate in the presidential debates, how high the podiums will be. They even prohibit the candidates from asking each other questions. When you have this degree of candidate control over the most important public forum, it's only natural that questions like skull and bones that may make the candidates uncomfortable, and other questions relating to an extraordinary diversity of issues, are not addressed, are not touched, and are entirely ignored.
Washington, D.C., good morning.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, go ahead, Washington.
You're really talking to me. Okay.
We're talking to you. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Chris Adams. I'm from Fairfax County, Virginia, and I'm disgusted with what's happening in politics today, mainly because there's no real difference between the Democrat and the Republican Party. The Republicans seem to be the party of lesser government, and the Democrats seem to be more involved in all-encompassing government, but there's